everyone, and welcome to our new web series, Rethinking Black Wealth. Oh man, we have a lot to cover in this series because, and let me pop up a little statistic for you guys. Did you know that Black people own 6% of the total real estate wealth in the United States in the third quarter of 2021? And this is given that 13% of the population is Black. How crazy is that? When you think about home ownership as a pathway to wealth, it is very staggering how many people do not own a home and how many people don't plan to own a home. So I brought in one of my homegirls to talk to us about how we can leverage real estate, whether it's personal home ownership or real estate investing, as a pathway to wealth. So welcome to the show, Krista. You are the first guest on the Rethinking Black Wealth webinar series, and I am so happy to have you join us for this conversation. Please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yes. Oh my gosh, LaKesha, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and share some knowledge with everyone. Um, so I am a realtor licensed in North Carolina, and I service the Charlotte region or Greater Charlotte region. And my background in real estate is, I feel like I've been in real estate my entire life. I grew up with a real estate investor father, and he actually owned three homes on the block that we lived on. So I got to see him, collecting rents and dealing with tenants, but also I got to experience how owning real estate can really change your life essentially, and really propel you in so many different ways. He had a lot of different business ventures, and he used the equity that he had from his real estate business to make some moves. So I'd love to share how that can help everyone.
Awesome, awesome. So one of the things that, has struck me is how people say that, home ownership is a part of the American dream. And a lot of people I don't think really understood what that meant, but it's like the way I guess like our society was kind of structured for a segment of the population is like you buy a house like in your 20s, and the reason you have the 30-year mortgage is so that by the time you retire, you actually own your home. And so, like, mortgage is a huge expense that when you're in retirement, you guys shouldn't be paying a mortgage because you should own the place where you live. And, like, during those years, as you said, if you need equity or if you need money, then your home, like your most valuable asset, was typically where people received like that influx of money. But what happened? Like, why do we not buy homes?
So what happened? Well, first things first. Most homeowners only stay in their home 5 to 8 years. So that's the first thing. And the 30-year fixed mortgage is, yes, it was an idea of how, later on in life you would be in the same home. But in reality, what we have is people who they move for their jobs, or they move for a change in lifestyle, or, you know, are there people who stay in their homes 18 years? Absolutely. But you don't have to keep your home for 30 years by any means. Um, the reason why it can still be the American dream is because every month that mortgage that you pay, a little bit of that mortgage, outside of like, taxes and other expenses that make up that mortgage payment, goes to the principal of the loan. So that's essentially cash. Think of it this way, that you're putting away, that 8 years down the line, it can accumulate. But not just that, the reason why real estate is one of the safest investments is because it grows.
Yes.
So say you do buy a home, in 2020, and you want to sell in 2028, the value of that home has changed. So if you bought it for 200,000, by 2028, it's probably going to be worth 300,000 or more. So you not only have now the money that you paid down on the house to use, you now have the market value. So that extra $100,000 that you can use. So that's why it's such a safe investment. People will always need somewhere to live. Now, when you're renting, you're spending the same amount as a mortgage, but that's
Or
essentially
more.
money, or more, right? A lot of times more. Oh my gosh, this past weekend, my aunt and uncle told me that they've had their home for about 30 years. Their mortgage in New York is, I think, $1,500.
Wow.
Mind you, their home is probably worth like 700, $800,000 now.
Wow.
So it's like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like we get afraid of the short term, like, okay, I have to save some money to put down on the house, and then buying a house is stressful. But long term, it's just the best decision you can make for yourself financially owning,
Yeah.
especially if you have a trusted realtor.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of
Mhm.
the things like I want this show to do is to go beyond the budget, beyond the basics, and to get into that next level, like really wealth building strategy. So once
Mhm.
you buy your home, that opens the door for you to for you to potentially buy a second property. And as
Mhm.
we know, like being a landlord and being able to rent out properties is also where you can generate a lot of wealth because you might buy a home. And one of the things like I advocate for, especially people who are from small towns, like I'm from a small town and houses like in my small town are like maybe 30, $50,000.
Right.
Or like you can buy, this house is worth like maybe 30, $50,000 and the mortgage is like ridiculously low on that
Mhm.
amount. And now you own an asset that you can then go and leverage for other things. And I don't think like we often look at like, all right, now
Right.
that I own my personal house, how do I now start to use that as leverage to buy additional property? So, can you talk a little bit about how that can be a strategy for people?
Yes, so that's a great strategy. So, back in the day, so I'm going to be speaking from what I know about my dad, that was an amazing investor. He was able to purchase a duplex, but that was in New York. And not every, city in the US has duplexes. Charlotte has them, but they're not as, you're not going to see them as often.
Right,
Um, but that's how people start. They buy a duplex, and buying a duplex means that your side or your part of the home that you live in can be whatever you want it. And then the other part that is unoccupied, you can rent. And that's essentially half your mortgage right there paid for
right,
in rent, if not all of it. Because if you fix it up or you put a little bit of money in it, and you make it appeal to whatever the market value is in the area that you live, you'll be able to charge more than your mortgage sometimes in rent. Um, Now, with that cash flow, you can do a lot of different things. You can pay down on your principal faster. You can essentially, I mean, just living for free. So
mm,
the money that you would typically use to pay your mortgage, you can save it and put it into purchasing or acquiring something else. But essentially compounding whatever cash flow that you have. Um, Whatever you choose, real estate is just a win. Like, I don't know how many ways to just put it out to you, but there's so many things you can do. And then you don't also have to have or use your equity. There are people who will give you money to use for things like flips or, whatever you choose, really. But you definitely want to sit down with a realtor in your area if you're not in Charlotte, um, and kind of work out all of those details and figure out what would be the best thing for you. Um, so yeah, that's what I was saying to that.
yeah, and I think some people are afraid of implementing that strategy because they're like, I
Mm,
don't want to be a landlord, or, what if something breaks? But we live in a gig economy. And so there are people who
mhm.
do property management. There are people who, are handymen like on the
Yes,
side. And so, but you do have to allocate like a portion of that rent amount toward like those expenses because you don't want to
absolutely.
be a slumlord. So you don't
Right.
like
Yeah,
like
yeah,
live where you like you get in where you fit in. But if
yeah.
you allocate a portion and you keep your property like up, then you're able to charge more for rent as well, so you can cover that expense. So can you talk a little bit about how like that's not something people really have to be afraid of, and how like that works?
Yeah. So how that works is, there are so many different things. You can do a home warranty that kind of protects you, and there are different sorts of policies. In that instance, you would want to contact someone who could help you with, homeowners insurance and how it equates to working with a landlord. There are companies out here that are ready and willing to manage the property for you and just pay you your dividends at the end of the month or the end of the year. and they take their fee out, and they also take things like operating expenses out. Um, Again, it doesn't have to be super complicated.
Yeah.
That's why we have all of these professionals out here who love what we do and want to help you. And just start by asking the questions. So I feel like, I talk a lot about fear. Fear just keeps us stuck, right?
Yeah.
So when we think of something that's big or it seems big, we just stop like, okay, that's too big for me. But if you just start reaching out to the right people, asking questions, they'll put you in the right direction so that you can figure it out if this is something that you really want to do. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And a lot of people, this is one of the things that just really drives me crazy. When people like inherit property, like, it might be like
Mm.
grandma's house or, their parents' house, and they don't, want to maintain it. Like, can we talk just a little bit about how like that's an asset that yeah, you might get the cash from it, but you no longer have that asset, which can be a wealth building tool if you just think more strategically about it.
I agree. I agree. Um, the whole inheritance of a home is just such a beautiful and very loving thing
Right.
that our ancestors do for us, if they're able to or were able to purchase in whatever time that they were, allowed to. Let's be real.
Right. Right.
But I definitely feel like some people don't know where to start with keeping a home, especially if they've always been able to call their property manager and get things fixed quickly.
Mm,
It's kind of overwhelming to think about, okay, the roof needs to be replaced, and that's like $10,000 to $15,000, or there are shingles missing, or oh my gosh, I have to replace an HVAC, that's 8,000. So I do understand why some people who are not equipped to handle or manage real estate that they've been given or has passed on, they sometimes sell it. But the beautiful thing about real estate is just because you sell it doesn't mean you have to blow the money. You
right.
can take the money and put it down on something newer that would be easier to manage, that has an updated roof, updated HVAC system, anything that's within the bones of the house that would be a really expensive thing to fix. Take the money that you would make from the sale of that home that was left for you, and you're still holding tight to that legacy if you put it in the right place.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
And one of the things that you mentioned earlier is like equity. So
Mm.
um so there's a No Grease franchise, and some of you may be familiar with it. And the twins who, own that franchise, they talked about how they were in their 20s and they had bought a house, and they took the equity from the house to actually start their first barber shop and their first business. And I hear a lot of people talking about how, they don't have the money to start their business or to scale or to grow. And if we teach our children like, hey, rather than go and buy like the Louis Vuitton and the Gucci or the Mercedes or, and nothing wrong with all that stuff. But however, if we, put them in the mindset of, maybe if you buy a house, like own some property, become responsible, then when you get to like your late 20s, 30s, and you start thinking about making other moves, as you said, like you built up some equity, which gives you a little bit of freedom to make different decisions than you're able to make if you're paying like $1,000 a month for a Mercedes while living in an apartment. And the reality is like you have no equity in any of that, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Especially because as soon as you drive that Benz off the lot, it depreciates. So
Right.
you're spending $1,000 a month on essentially something that's not even worth it anymore from the second you drive it off the lot. So um, that's a good point. Equity is kind of one of those things that people hear the word and they're like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Equity is essentially the gap that you have between the remainder that you have to pay on the loan and the value of the house. And so, as I mentioned earlier, with like growing equity as time goes on in a home, your equity can go from 20,000 when you walk in the door to 120,000 in Charlotte, really in a year and a half.
Yeah.
And so with that money, that's your money because that's your house. You can take the money out of your investment and use it. You can take that $100,000, buy a barbershop. You can buy your Benz cash. I don't ever recommend buying a car before the cash. But if that's what you want to do, so you're not
Right.
having $1,000 car payment, it's just so many other things you could do. You can get the repairs that you need. You can pay down your student loans. You can, you know, take that dream vacation, whatever you want to do. You can
Right.
do that with your equity. But if you're paying rent and you've been paying rent for 10 years, 15 years, it's a little bit harder. And then if you don't want a house, because let's be real, some people in their 20s are like, I don't want a house.
Yeah.
Get a condo, a townhouse, something that you can own and get that money back on.
Yeah, and I just want, all of our viewers and listeners to be clear, like, this is not to demonize anybody for the decisions
Mm-mm.
that they make, but if we're going to rethink what it means to accumulate Black wealth, like we really have to rethink like some of the pathways that we've taken. And one of those is just like not investing in real estate and not teaching our children the importance. And that's just the reality, because if it was something that we were doing, then there would be more, Black homeowners, and we would have more of that piece of the pie. And when you have that asset and you go to buy a car, or you're looking at your credit score, like it makes a huge difference, because that's one of the things that they say is like, as a part of the credit mix, like, do you own real estate?
Yeah.
And it's a sign of stability if you have a
Yeah.
mortgage. And the same amount that you're paying for rent, you can be paying for mortgage. And if you decide to move, you don't have to sell the house. You can rent the house out, depending on how
Mm-hmm.
much equity you have, and then go buy something else. So there's so many different strategies that can be utilized through real estate, aside from just like, oh, I don't know if I want a house. And it's like, yeah, but do you want wealth?
I agree. And furthermore, like, to your point about all of the like things that you feel in the beginning, because it does seem like really overwhelming.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that comes up is like, oh my God, my credit score, or, this is my first time buying a house, I don't have any money. There are down payment assistance programs. There are a lot of lenders that they will work with you with your credit, and they have these really cool simulators that they can look at your credit report and put in, okay, if this person paid off this line item or that line item, what would take their credit to the point that they can get this amount of money. So it doesn't have to be that way. It may not be instant. We live in a very instant gratification world, but you can set up a strategy with a professional to
Right.
get you to owning a home for sure.
Yeah. And for some people, it's better to start in your 20s before you mess up your credit and get a house, rather than waiting until your 30s and you're like, man, now what do I need to pay off? What do I need to do?
Yeah.
And I think, that's why this needs to be one of those conversations that we're having with young adults. Like, there was a young lady who said, like, she just bought a house, but there's so much that, nobody told her about home ownership. And I think it just goes back to, it's not a discussion that we have that prepares people for that first home, that they can even get to the point of like the second home and the investment properties. And let's not even talk about like commercial real estate investing, like all the other opportunities that can stem from that first property. Yeah. So the other thing is like inflation. So, everybody's, looking at their 401k portfolios right now. Some people are, just like sick to their stomach. But, real estate is, as you said, it's like one of those assets that, you want to have a mix. So I don't advocate putting all your money in stocks, all of your money in bonds, all of your money in real estate. But real estate can be one of those assets that kind of hedges against, your portfolio's performance in down markets. Because a lot of times when the market is down, real estate is up. And so that's why people who are wealthy and successful, they have a mix of assets, right?
Yeah, for sure. So when we get into inflation, yes, inflation it is what it is. I mean, it's not much I can say. But what I can speak to is right now with mortgage rates, in the last few weeks, they've already gone down a little bit, and we're still at a historic low. No,
Yeah.
they're not at 2 and 3%, but they're not as high as when your parents purchased a home. So it's still a good time to buy. And then another thing that I'm seeing is like with the fluctuation right now, I think it's like between 5 and 6.25%. We're really talking about a difference in a mortgage, like between like $100 and $400. Now, if you waited from like January to May, you might have seen like $800 difference. So that probably wasn't the best decision, but right now it's still a really, really good time to buy. With real estate, we always say the best time is now because we can only speak to what's going on right now with the market, right now with the rates. A lot of lenders, they have rate lock programs. I love my lender. He's amazing. You're allowed to use whoever you want, but he just sets my clients up for success every time.
Mm,
And, you know, it's about really prioritizing your goals. Really, that's what it comes down to. Because I
yeah.
mean, you can talk yourself out of anything. You can use all of the things going on around you to talk yourself out of it. Even in an up market, you know, you can say, "Oh my God, it's so much competition," but in reality, if you really want to do something right now, despite inflation, despite everything going on, it can still happen. You can still get with the right professionals that are in your, you know, general area or location, and they will help you make your goals, you know, achievable
Yeah.
for sure.
So, as people are preparing for this process, like what are some things that you advise your clients to do just to get themselves ready for, real estate purchase, real estate investing, just, aside from like mentally, like I'm about to owe like a few $100,000 to someone, but, what are some of the things that people need to be thinking about to prepare for this?
Um, well, so the first thing is I want people to start shopping. I keep saying this, professionals. Don't shop your mortgage yet. Don't shop your even your home because you really need to see where you stack up credit wise, where you stack up income wise, what you do need to save to get things rolling, especially if you are completely in the dark. You
Yeah.
need to find a realtor that has great lender partners that can get you set up for success. Um, you know, the first thing I do when I meet someone and they're interested in buying a home is I send them to my lender partner or one of them because I need to figure out who has the best programs, knows the most about the industry right now and what's going on, and can really sit down with my client and look at everything all out on the table and tell them, okay, this is the plan or strategy for you. And when it gets to choosing a realtor, use someone that you vibe with. They don't have to have 60, 70 years of experience. And they don't have to be up on all the TikTok dances or, you know what I'm saying? Like all the challenges. But I think in anything, it's really important to be able to sit down and really speak to people. Buying a home is stressful
Yeah.
because it is the biggest purchase if it's your first time um, of your life, essentially, even if it's not your first time buying a home. So you need someone that can calm and de-escalate and someone who is going to make the experience just super smooth for you. And that's okay with seeing you vulnerable because, you know, sometimes we're therapists, sometimes we're mediators. Um, like, you know, that's every job where you're people facing, but you want to be sure that you're okay with this person seeing you at a vulnerable place, and you want to know that you can trust this person to do the things necessary to get you not only to the closing table, but to the closing table with the best deal and really advocate for you. So that's the advice. All the accolades are also very important. So I always joke about like seeing realtors with a ton of letters behind their names. Those realtors, they have done the work to really make sure that the way they service you is above your expectations. So yes, so do your research on the people that you would like to work with, for sure.
Yeah, because it's really a team because you have
Yeah,
so many people that come to the table. It's not just the realtor, it's not just your lender, but you have to do your title search, you have a closing attorney. So, you should see who your realtor is bringing to the team or who they can refer
Mm-hmm.
you to, especially if
Mm-hmm.
you don't know the process. And
Yeah.
if real estate investing is a future part of your strategy, you also want someone you can build a relationship with that knows that, this is the goal that we have and we're looking to, purchase additional properties in the future so they can
Mm-hmm.
be looking out for deals for you. Like it really should be a relationship that you're seeking
Yes.
to establish and
Yes.
not just like, oh yeah, this person's like commercial like popped up on my Facebook feed. So,
Right.
like you said, like,
Or this person's hitting the Dougie real, like I like their Dougie or whatever TikTok challenge is
right,
going.
like somebody
It works
immediately came
too.
to my mind that does that, and that's why I laughed when you said that because I'm just like, what does that have to do with what?
With
Anyway.
real estate.
Right. And that's why, like, I think that, we just have to take, really seriously the people that we're building relationship with if we're trying to build wealth, because some of the smartest, most credentialed people are not on social media. And so, sometimes it's about like asking your friends. Like when we were talking, because if you guys don't know, she's an amazing makeup artist. And she's doing my makeup for if you guys have seen my photos, my professional photos, not the ones I take. Like she's the one who's behind the beat, who has me looking just like as good as I look. But just from like our conversation, and you were telling me that you're a realtor, and just the knowledge that you shared, it's like, yes, this is someone I want to introduce to my community. And so if you guys like, have friends that have bought houses, like ask them about the person that they work with. What was that experience like? Because you really want that relationship because, they about to.
And even if they've had a bad experience,
Yeah.
that's important too, because you need to know what sucked.
Yeah.
You need to know, okay, you ask someone, how was your experience purchasing a home? And they're like, oh my God, it was horrible. Ask them why. That
Yeah.
way you know what to look for as well. And of course, more importantly, and I realize I did not mention this, make sure they're knowledgeable about your local market. They
Yeah.
don't need to speak for the entire United States, but they need to be able to speak for what's going on, like in your backyard, or be eager to find out. I
Yeah.
mean, they should already know, but if they don't, they need to be able to find those things, that information for you.
And can we say it's okay to break up with the realtor? Because,
Oh my gosh.
I had a realtor once that
Yes.
was like sending me listings, and it's just like, okay, but this is not what I asked you for. Like, this is not.
Right.
And I told me, like, you did not hear anything that I said. And, like, sometimes, like, because, we can be some loyal people. Like, we don't like breaking up with our hairdressers. Like, we'll go to a
Right.
mechanic that ain't really
Right.
fixed our car for real. But, like, grandpa, like, worked with him. Like we have to learn how to like work with people who are working with us, and sometimes like if you're getting listings that are not what you have in mind, that's not what you want, then it might be a case where you say, okay, this isn't working, like let me find the right person before you get too far down the road.
Yes, yes. And yes, before you're under contract, you can absolutely break up. If you notice that you're having to, sit down with them way too frequently and talk about what your goals are, and they just seem completely uninterested, then, maybe it is time to see what else is out there for you. Um, and that's okay. That is perfectly fine. There are so many of us, and many of us are very skilled and very happy to help you reach your goals.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to have like this conversation with our community. Please let
Absolutely.
them know like how they can reach you if they have any questions, just guidance. Like, where can they find you?
Yes. My name is Krysta Medley, and I am with Compass, and I am a part of the Bullock and Co. team. You can find me on Instagram at Casey Medley Realtor, and you can find me, Instagram, Facebook, all Casey Medley Realtor. You can DM me, you can text me, you can email me. All of that is on my Instagram, and I love helping people with all of their home buying needs or home selling needs. So please reach out to me.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna have to get into selling real estate in a separate episode. Like,
Yes,
what
yeah,
does that look like? Because, just because you buy it doesn't mean you have to keep it forever. So, how do you
no,
get out so that you can get into something else? But thank you so
yes.
much for your first visit on our Rethinking Black Wealth series. We hope you guys will tune in, share, reach out to Krista if you have any questions.
Please
And
do.
if you're not in the Charlotte area, I'm sure she can help you find the resources to find the right person, because as we said, we want you to find a good relationship realtor that you can really work to build wealth with, because real estate is a pathway to wealth. So thank you again, Krista.
Oh my gosh, no, thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right, everybody. See you back here next week. Same time, same